Hello and welcome to the Ambassadors Roundtable. We are tracking the pandemic. We're discussing it on the show. New infections in India, thankfully, are steadily declining. But around Asia, a major outbreak is forcing countries to resort to stricter lockdowns all over again. At the same time, the debate on the origins of the virus is heating up, with many countries now demanding more investigation into two angles. One is a natural origin and the second is a lab origin. How will this probe impact the global fight against this pandemic? What about vaccines? When will everyone be able to get a shot? To discuss all this and more, we're joined by a special panel of guests today. Pham San Chau, Ambassador of Vietnam to India. Dr. Hiba Salah Eldin El Marasi, Egypt's Ambassador to India. Dr. Marian Sensen, Ambassador of Slovenia to India. He joins us from Ljubljana in Slovenia. And Ruben Gauci, Malta's High Commissioner to India. Welcome to WION. We know that Vietnam is coping with its worst outbreak in this pandemic, and a new variant has been detected. It has been termed as quote-unquote very dangerous by Vietnam's own health minister. All 9 million people in Ho Chi Minh will now undergo a test. What is the situation like right now?
For the first time over the past 1 year and a half, Vietnam is facing with the fourth COVID attack. In the previous 3 attacks, we are almost safe in the sense that we have got only 1,600 cases. But since 27 April until now, we have nearly 4,000. So basically, we have 150 and 200 cases per day. That is the reason why the government of Ho Chi Minh City has decided to implement lockdown since 2 days ago. And this is the first time the big city, Ho Chi Minh City, is undergoing through a lockdown. But on the average, we still have already between 200 and 250 cases per day. And up to now, we have less than 50 mortalities since the outbreak of the pandemic since March 2020.
I think that is the lesson for all of us. It's not over in any country until it's over in all the countries, and there are waves, and the virus somehow keeps coming back. Dr. El Marasi, on Tuesday, Egypt eased its lockdown measures, and now it is gearing up to resume tourism with vaccination of hotel staff and residents, which is very good. But are you also worried that the growing infections in Asia and elsewhere might derail the return of normalcy for countries like Egypt?
First of all, thank you for having me with you today, and thank you for giving me the chance to be with my distinguished colleagues, the ambassadors today. Yes, Egypt has been easing its measures since yesterday, and we are doing a lot of precautions since the first day of the pandemic. Since the first day, we were keen to do a multi-dimensional strategy to cope with the pandemic. We had a lot of precautionary measures consisting of curfews, of social distances, and all the things followed in most of the countries. At the same time, we were keen to have our economy going and not to stop the economy. It's not that tourism also didn't start these days. Tourism is working in Egypt. Egypt has been welcoming tourists since last summer, and we are doing a lot of precautions. We are vaccinating our people working in the tourism sector, and they were considered as the first lines in the vaccination. So they were among the first people to be vaccinated. We were taking all the precautionary measures in our tourist resorts, starting by sanitization and social distances. Until now, thank God, we were successful in keeping our tourists and our people working in the tourist section as safe as possible.
Dr. Sensen, Slovenia is one of the several European countries that are allowing fully vaccinated visitors now. They can holiday there without quarantine. But at the same time, countries like the United Kingdom are also reporting a surge all over again, despite rapid vaccinations. What steps is Europe then taking to avoid a new wave of infections?
So thank you very much for having me. And I also would like to thank first India when it showed solidarity last year when we needed some pharmaceutical ingredients, and Slovenia was one of the countries that received it. We witnessed two waves in Slovenia. One was last year, and it went pretty well. We actually declared officially the end of, at that time, first wave, which we didn't know. We adopted also 8 economic packages that seems to work, because the growth for this year is estimated about 2.8%, which is quite promising. The second wave was more heavy because we had many more infections. And people really started to understand what's going on, because this virus was somehow not seriously taken. We still have some who have some doubts about security precautions. It's true, we are quite successful in vaccinating people, but we still also check the tests, and also the measures are slowly relaxed. So just recently we opened some restaurants with limited number of visitors, and indoors we still have to wear masks, but generally speaking, the virus is still unpredictable. So we'll try to educate people to behave properly, and let's hope that this will work.
Hi, Commissioner Gauci. Malta is one of the few countries in the world that can claim to have achieved herd immunity. As of last week, you had vaccinated, 70% of the adult population with at least one shot. The positivity rate is less than 1%. So your country may have returned to normalcy, but the rest of the world is still struggling to contain the virus. What kind of challenges does it pose for you for the long-term recovery, this kind of divide?
Well, thank you very much. You are quite right. We have we have managed to get herd immunity. 70% of the population has already got one shot, and 49% of the population has gotten 2 shots. Obviously, Malta has always been open for business from beyond its borders. So, you know, people are now eager to open again. And in fact, I even get requests about when will Malta be open for India, for instance, right? I am really, really impressed by what the Indian government is doing. And I am seeing that the numbers of infections here in India are going down drastically. And my country people in Malta are already asking me, so when can we start welcoming people from India? Because the relation between Malta and India in a lot of sectors, working, education, tourism, was quite large before, unfortunately, COVID struck last year. So definitely now, you know, the Maltese people have to keep in mind that the fact that in Malta it's good and that we have herd immunity doesn't mean that everywhere is the same, and doesn't mean that suddenly we can open up our doors as much as we wish. Obviously, from my point of view, I am really looking forward to see Indian people going to Malta. It is my honor to be, and my pride to be here in India, to be serving my country here. Unfortunately, as you may have heard, we had a very, very bad situation when we had a Maltese national dying here in India, and I was assisting his family throughout. But that has opened, that has actually increased the bond between Malta and India. Why? Because we know that both of us can have this, can suffer. And from the help that we received here in India during this case, it showed the big heart of the Indian nation. So now India is really in every Maltese person's mind, the suffering which is here, but also the perspective that after the suffering after COVID is over, Malta will be open to India with both arms.
It's best to err on the side of caution. I think that's the best strategy for most governments when we talk about opening up. Ambassador Chow, Vietnam was among the first and among the few countries, in fact, that acted in time last year to contain the virus by imposing strict lockdowns and curbs, and that paid dividends. And you did this well before the WHO declared a pandemic. Where do you think that leading countries in the world and the World Health Organization went wrong, or how could they have responded better when it comes to early detection?
I'm not an expert on medical issues in order to make a comment on that. What I can share with you that in the case of Vietnam, we apply a strategy of contact tracing and apply quarantine and try to address any cases of infection. And thanks to the policy of contact tracing and strict quarantine, as well as treatment of the serious cases, we have been able to put under control the pandemic over the past 16 months. Basically, we did have 1, 2, 3 wave, but the casualty is less, only 30 mortalities, and less than 1,500 cases. But the fourth wave is very, very dangerous because the new variant is spreading very fast, and it's also attacked the youth. And the issue is that because of a lot of mutations, so it's very difficult to trace them now. But until now, my government has not changed yet the policy of contact tracing. So we applied a mini lockdown for areas where we have the cases, and in our system, we are still able to number the patients. So up to now, we have 6,000 plus patients, and we can trace them and take them as F0, F1, and even F2. So I hope that together with that policy and strict 5K, like wearing masks, keep washing hands, things like that, and we start the vaccination campaign, we will be able to put the pandemic under control again, as we did in the previous 3 waves.
Right, and as you said, yes, health expertise is critical in responding to a pandemic, but so is leadership and the ability to take tough calls and decisions. Dr. El Mirasi, this pandemic began about 17 months ago. We still don't know how it began, though. The World Health Organization had ordered an investigation into the origins of the pandemic after many countries asked for it, but experts are split over the findings. Do you think the WHO failed in its role as the guardian of global health?
We cannot say that the WHO has failed, because the WHO is doing its best to curb this pandemic. It's the first time, this pandemic is the first time that we face it in the whole world, so we cannot say they failed. No, on the contrary, they are doing their best to try to fight this pandemic in cooperation with all the countries of the world. And as we say, nobody is safe till everybody is safe. So I cannot judge from the scientific point of view they are successful or not, but we see that they are doing their best so that everybody could be in the near future safe. And if I speak about Egypt, for example, Egypt has achieved a lot of progress in this sector. We are having now less than 1,000 cases every day. We have we have achieved economic development together with the precautionary measures. I can say, and I'm proud to say, that Egypt during the last year have achieved a GDP of 3%, in a figure that a lot of countries haven't been able to achieve. So I think we are all cooperating together. The whole world is going through a very tough time, but we are all, the whole world, plus the WHO, are cooperating together to curb this pandemic.
Right. Dr. Sensen, the United States has begun probing two theories, natural and lab origins. The president has ordered this investigation. The European Union has demanded a more transparent investigation into the origins as well, calling for better access to data and samples of early cases. But China has so far deflected any demands for a further investigation. Where does your country in particular and Europe in general stand when it comes to the next steps in finding out the origins of this virus?
Well, certainly we are witnessing some new example of virus, so everybody is a little bit in the dark about it. But as you said, the European Union, and I'm sure it's in everybody's interest to find the source of this virus, and this not just to blame, but it's important to prevent the further pandemics. So I believe that everybody should do its part of work. You know, the institutions, the medical science. Because it's in everybody's interest that we've discovered as much as possible about this virus, about its origins, and everybody should show some solidarity with other nations, because as we all know, this is not one nation issue, this is a global issue. So whoever may and can contribute to preventing further spreading of the virus should do its part properly.
Hi, Commissioner Gauchi, do you believe everybody has done what they could have done? Do you believe the World Health Organization has been an impartial arbiter, for instance, in this pandemic?
Well, I believe so. I mean, the situation of the pandemic has struck the world by surprise. Somebody once asked me, so like, was India prepared for COVID-19? Was Malta prepared for COVID-19? And my answer was, I don't think anybody anywhere in the world was prepared for such a pandemic. I believe that the World Health Organization has done a lot of good. One cannot expect, obviously, perfection. I mean, when something new strikes you, you cannot expect that there will not be any mistakes, that there will not be any problems, etc., etc. In the case of my country, so recently I was talking to some medics from my country, and they said that thankfully the amount of mistakes which we did were very, very, very small in comparison to other places in the world. So I would also like to continue with what you said exactly after I finished my first intervention. When you said that safety is the most important thing. Malta is definitely working on that. We have even laws which say that you cannot enter Malta without a PCR test in the last 72 hours, and nobody will even be allowed on a plane to Malta without such tests, even though we have achieved herd immunity. We have a list of countries which can, from which people can visit Malta. There are other countries which are unfortunately not as yet not in such a list. But if you ask me whether the World Health Organization did well, I believe that in the circumstances, in the very challenging circumstances which COVID has brought to the world, I believe the job was well done.
Right. Ambassador Chow, Vietnam alongside India has also called for a waiver on COVID vaccine patents. But discussions on the waiver this week failed to reach any conclusions. Do you think that rich countries, or some of them, are depriving the world of life-saving vaccines by doing this?
I think that the whole humanity is faced with this pandemic unprecedentedly. And it's called for a concerted efforts of all the countries. I believe strongly that only with the solidarities and the sharing of all the countries across the globe, we will be able to tide over this challenges period. So therefore, this is the moment for the sense of sharing, for the sense of solidarity. And all the countries, I believe, that have almost reached that agreement, and negotiation is underway at different international organizations in order to come with that. I understand that some countries still have some reservation, but the tendency is that everybody share that the rich countries should help the poorer countries. And it is also the case that the richer people in every country should help the poorer people in every single country.
Right, that would be ideal. Dr. El-Merassi, while negotiations continue, the World Trade Organization also hosted a dialogue with vaccine manufacturers from Egypt, from India, Bangladesh and some other countries from the developing world. The developed world has been accused of hoarding vaccine supplies. So how can developing countries in this scenario, we cannot wait endlessly for things to move forward at the WTO, how can we then solve the problem of shortages?
First of all, I want to inform you that Egypt is one of the countries co-sponsoring this proposal by India and South Africa. And we were also cooperating with the other countries to try to reach a solution about this. We are convinced that a lot of developing countries have a lot of untapped capabilities that should be used in combating COVID-19. Also, at the same time, we believe that the intellectual property rights should be respected in order to reach the development and research. So there should be, but in a way that doesn't hinder or make an obstacle for the developing countries to be able to produce the vaccines. So discussions are going now to reach a solution that developing countries be able to produce the vaccines without endangering the intellectual property rights.
Dr. Sensen, more than 100 countries back a waiver on vaccine patents, but the European Union right now is standing in its way, even when the European Parliament has backed a temporary waiver. Why is the EU pushing back against a patent waiver?
Well, I would say that the discussion is still going on, as far as I know. It's true, there are different opinions. I don't believe that European Union is against sharing. It's just that we find the proper way how to do this sharing. And I'm optimistic about the final solution that will come. And I understand, as we all agree, that this is a common problem, and we cannot stop the virus just to protect more developed countries or rich people. We have to stop it everywhere. And Slovenia is also sharing its part as much as possible. So we are sending vaccines to some of the neighboring countries to support them because they cannot afford that much. I'm also optimistic that in India now the production is widening. I've seen that Bharat Biotech is getting more production lines. I took Bharat Biotech Covaxin because I trust that this is a good vaccine. And I hope with the time and hopefully as soon as possible this can be solved. I don't think it will be ideal for everyone, but there should be a compromise which would be an improvement of the present situation.
Hi, Commissioner Gauci. This is the most interesting part about this pandemic. All leaders talk about solidarity. All leaders talk about the world coming together to respond. But it seems when specific interests are perceived to be under threat, then they don't always walk the talk. Do you believe this is the biggest impediment in fighting the pandemic? Do you believe rich countries are, in this case, unable to shake off pressure from big pharma?
Well, we are a very, very small country. So in a sense, as far as pressure is concerned, our effect obviously may be smaller than that of other larger countries. As my colleague from Slovenia said, we as part of the European Union, I don't believe that the European Union is against sharing. I believe, on the other hand, that pharmaceutical companies have to be brought in line. They have to go by the principles, first of all, by the legal principles, but also by the principles of solidarity, because finally, each life around the world, every life around the world is worth the same, no matter in which country it is, no matter in which continent it is. So I think as a globe, we have to strive for equity. Now, on the other hand, I understand that every country thinks of itself first. In the case, I mean, this applies to all our countries, finally, including my own. My government was fighting tooth and nail to get as much vaccines as possible to Malta in order to achieve what we managed to achieve. Obviously, in this sense, the fact that our population is small, that helped us. Because what we were requiring was much less than what other countries were requiring as far as vaccines is concerned. I would also like, I mean, once more joining my Slovenian colleague to congratulate India on the Covaxin, on the Covaxin vaccine, because I believe it saved a lot of lives, especially here in India. So India really served as a beacon. India was very, very, very generous with the neighboring countries before the second crisis started here. So I believe that India should be remembered as having been very generous, as having been full of solidarity, especially, and one also taking into account that given the large population of India, India gave even what it could have spared for its own.
I think that's a good note to end on, and I understand that balancing national interest and international responsibility cannot be easy for any leader. I also want to thank all of you, because these are contentious issues on which you've taken questions, and as diplomats, I understand you have to weigh your words, but you've been very frank and forthcoming. Thank you very much for being with us on WION.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.